Good afternoon, everyone. I guess it's morning. Let me start over. Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Purdue, and I am the infrastructure nerd. And so being an infrastructure nerd, that makes me a nerd. And being a nerd, that makes me unaware of whether or not it's morning or afternoon. You are attending our November Coffee Pot webinar. And this month we're talking about managing your email and not forgetting to bill for it. The more important part of the two things, although I think they're both pretty important. I'm going to start by telling you a story, but before I tell you the story, we're going to do just a slight bit of preamble, and we are going to look at this, which is probably what is on your screen over on the right, or at least something like what is on your screen over on the right. If you're still looking at this whole thing, that means you have not collapsed it. You could collapse it by clicking this button that looks like arrows pointing to the right. Clicking that button will cause this big thing to slide off your screen. The reason to do that, if you don't have a lot of real estate on your screen, would be to be able to see what's on my screen. If you can already see what's on my screen, then you don't need to collapse this. But if you do collapse it, when you do, this button will turn into one that looks like arrows pointing to the left. And clicking that button again will cause this to come back into focus. You would want to do that if you have a question and you're shy. Although I was just telling Patty that we haven't had anybody not be shy for quite some time. So if you're shy and you want to ask a question, you just come here and type it right where it says enter a question for staff. Do not forget to hit send. When appropriate, Patty, our humble moderator, well, no, I'm sorry, that's Leanne. Leanne's our humble moderator. Patty is our glad it's almost Christmas moderator, but more on that later. Patty will interrupt me at an opportune time and ask your question on your behalf. It's important to know that if you don't get the answer you want or you have follow-up questions, you can keep typing them here. Just keep remembering to hit send, and Patty will keep paying attention to what's showing up there, and she will continue to ask your questions and your follow-up questions on your behalf until you've got it fully answered. So if I don't explain it right, or you don't understand something, or you have something else that you thought of as I was answering, please keep typing those questions here. Now, if you are not shy, and maybe somebody won't be shy today, you would press this button here, come on mouse, there, that looks like a hand with an arrow pointing upward in front of it, and that means raise your hand. Patty will notice that you have raised your hand, but instead of her asking your question on your behalf, she will unmute you, and you will ask your question on your behalf. So without any further ado, I'm going to go to my Practice Master screen where you get to see what I'm doing today. Let's see, what else do we have? There we go. How about my monthly calendar? The reason I want to get onto something that you can look at for a minute is because I'm going to tell you a story and I'm not going to do anything on the screen. My father was a patent attorney. He's why I'm in this business, but we won't go that route with this story. He was a patent attorney. I started working with computers in the late 70s, so I got to see him at work. He had a woman named Tilly who was with him for many, many years, and she was his legal assistant, his secretary. At the time, she was his girl, okay, but that's because 90s. So we won't go there. He was his secretary, his legal assistant, and she did everything for him. That's the important thing. She did everything for him. Now, that's not entirely true. When he got his first computer, he started dictating, or stopped dictating his patent applications and actually started typing them. So he was actually pretty self-sufficient. But up until, gosh, I don't know, he died several years ago, and he really stopped practicing actively, at least where he'd be communicating with people before that. I think up until, he stopped practicing, everything that went on communicating with the client or anyone else wise was done in a letter, okay? And that's the important thing. So for many of you that are here, either as legal assistants or as paralegals or as attorneys, this shift happened for you maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. It depends on who you are and how familiar and comfortable you are with computers. But the shift that I'm talking about is the shift to email. But before we get to the shift to email, let's talk more about the letters. Tilly would type the letters. Later on, she would word process the letters. But she did it. She printed them. She gave them to him. He marked them up. She fixed them. He signed them. She had a piece of paper. She was in control of that piece of paper. Now, that had its advantages and its disadvantages. We'll talk about email. Email is instant. That's the problem. She knew what to do with that letter. She put it in the chrono file. She put it in the matter file. And she made sure that it got billed for. And that's a big part of what's not happening now. The emails that are being sent back and forth, 90% of communication with clients these days, and in some firms it's a little less, but in some firms it's 100%. And all communication, expert witnesses, patent examiners, whoever, whatever type of law it is that you're dealing with, all communication or most of it is being done via email. Whereas 10 years ago, I would hazard a guess that 90% of the communication was being done by letter. Without someone to, I hesitate to use the term babysit, but it's appropriate, to watch over the attorney and make sure that the right things happen with that piece of paper, that it gets put in the right place, and that it gets billed, it's a little bit less likely to happen, okay? So we're going to look now at how we might be able to wrestle this loss of control, that's not quite the right word, this loss of the ability, or remembering, I should say, to do the right thing with that correspondence that you've just written, because now it's an email. We're going to look at some ways to manage that. Now, as most of you know, probably all of you know, we here at Attorney Computer Systems tend to focus on working on office infrastructures that are built around tabs, PracticeMaster, and WorldDocs. PracticeMaster, of course, is our practice management system. WorldDocs, for some firms, does document management. Some firms don't have the need for a separate document management system, so some are using PracticeMaster to manage documents. If you have WorldDocs, your emails are probably being profiled in WorldDocs. If you have PracticeMaster, your emails are probably being profiled, if you will, or journaled, it's sometimes called when we're talking about PracticeMaster. They're probably being journaled into PracticeMaster. So let's start with a simple premise. Now here's the problem. If I was sitting at my desk all day, and if you as an attorney or a paralegal that needs to communicate but also needs to put it away in the right place and to bill for it, were sitting at your desk all day, this would be easier. But you're not. And even the people that are sitting at their desk all day without the right control, without the right discipline, without the right system in place, they sometimes have trouble with this too. But to make things much, much harder, we aren't sitting at our desks all day. Even the desk-bound attorneys are occasionally answering emails, and more frequently answering emails from the couch that evening in front of the television, or from the courthouse, or from their car while they're driving home, while not driving home, stuck in traffic. We don't want anybody dying, texting, and trying to communicate via email while they're driving. And because of that, these emails aren't going to the right place, they aren't being put away in the right place, and they're not being billed for. Now, how can we get that back? Let's take a look. Let's go to my inbox. Let's take an email right here. This is from Patrick at Stout Risius. So I'm going to profile this email in PracticeMaster for Stout Risius. I'm going to do that by clicking on PracticeMaster, by clicking on Journal. If you don't have this and you've got PracticeMaster and you don't have this in your Outlook, you just don't have the toolbar installed. I'm going to click on Journal, and I'm going to say this should go to Stout. It confirms that I've got the right person, and pretty much I just save it, and I've journaled that to PracticeMaster. Now, here's the key. I need to bill for it too. Again, I have a fee button, just like I had a journal button. It already knows, because I just journaled the email. It already knows it's stout. And I can have these defaults set so that it comes up and defaults to 0.25 hours, defaults to a certain description, and your description might simply be review and reply to email correspondence. I have it set to actually pull in some certain things from the email to help me build my description. And I can either augment this or I can simply hit save, and I have just billed for it. If we go back into Practice Master, pull up the client screen, go to Stout, go over to Fees. I've created a fee for that. Go over to Email. I have journaled that email. Now, those of you who are working with WorldDocs know that it's kind of the same thing. I'm going to go back to my inbox, and I'm also going to copy this email to WorldDocs. Same sort of thing, only here WorldDocs pops up and I journal the email. Now, one thing you'll notice is that I get a J and an F next to this email to indicate that it's been journaled and that a fee entry has been created for it. That's a huge part of what I'm going to describe as my infrastructure for making sure that things get billed and put away in the right place. First off, I work from sent items. So when I send an email, it ends up in here. Now think about it for a second. If you get an email, what are the two things you're going to do? You're either going to reply or you're not. Now, if you don't reply, is it something that needs to be put away? Maybe, but it's unlikely. If it's something that's important, you're going to reply and say, yes, I'll do that, or yes, it was green, or you're going to reply in some way and communicate with the client some more. Now, occasionally I will get emails that are not substantive enough for me to reply to, but I think have things that should be filed. I may be going back and forth about whether I'm going to meet with somebody tomorrow or whether I'm going to meet with somebody on Monday or Tuesday. We decide on Monday at 1 o'clock. They email back and say, that's perfect, I'll see you then. I don't want to say, email them back and say, okay, I'll see you then, because then we've got this never-ending chain of, okay, I'll see you then. And so I will take that email from my inbox and move it into WorldDocs, move it into Practice Master. But most of the emails that I am journaling or profiling is what we call it in WorldDocs. Basically what that means is I am putting them away with the matter, are being done from my sent items. Now, why is that so important? Because I don't always work here. One thing, first off, I'm going to send an email to Rob. I don't know if Rob's on the call. I know that he signed up for this. So we're going to send an email to Rob Foos. Well, or his assistant, Robin Litzelman. Isn't that funny? We type Rob. I'm going to get Rob Foos. There we go. And we get Robin. And I'm going to say, test, are you listening? Hopefully he is, because then he'll get this and he'll just ignore it. Otherwise, he'll get it, and then when he watches the recorded version later, he'll say, oh, that's why I got that email from Paul. And when I do that, my WorldDocs pops up and says, what do you want to do? And I move my message, and it already knows that Rob's at Lewis Wagner. It knows basically everything about where to put this, and it's done. The same thing can happen if you're journaling emails to Practice Master. You can, when you send the email, it can automatically pop up from Outlook and say, hey, do you want to put this away in Practice Master? You fill in the details just like I did for WorldDocs, and it's in Practice Master. Now, just so you know, here's Lewis Wagner. Here's the email tab, and so somewhere in here is the email I just sent to Rob. Well, no, it's not, because I'm using WorldDocs. And so same thing in WorldDocs. Here's that email I sent to Rob. As you can see, we used to journal things not in WorldDocs, but in Practice Master. That's why we have some emails here. And when I look at WorldDocs, I see that email. Okay? Now I'm going to stop for a second. Patty has a question.
Not really a question, but Rob just says, yes, he's listening.
Rob, I want you to reply to that email. Okay. Now, so we've done half the battle here. And in a minute, I'm going to explain what I mean about why it's important to work from your sent items. We've sent an email from our desk, and we have instantly put it away. Now, the other half of the battle as far as putting the email away, first I want to explain why it's important to put it away. As you can see, I'm in World Docs. As you can see here, I'm in Practice Master, and I can see those emails, okay? That means that anybody else that's tied into Practice Master or tied into World Docs can see them as well. Without putting the email away in the proper place, it's as if the letter that my father wrote 30 years ago that Tilly should have put in the file didn't get there. So nobody else is going to know that this email was sent or what the substantive nature of it was or what the reply was or anything if we're not journaling these emails. Now, you can still go look for it, but you're in a people-centric world without doing this. In Outlook, you got Rob Foose has his mailbox, Paul's got his mailbox, Patty has hers, Leanne has hers, Mary Jo has hers. If I weren't journaling these emails that go back and forth about our clients, then when Patty goes to look and see what I told a client, she won't be able to see it. She will, but she's got to go to my desk, look in my Outlook, sort through thousands of emails in my sent items or, you know, inbox or wherever she happens to be looking. She doesn't really know whether to look in sent items or the inbox. She has to try and find the emails that relate to a specific matter because that's what she's looking for. Here, we're putting it away with the matter. So we have this situation a little bit more under control if we're journaling our emails as we send them. But what about the emails we send from our car when we're stuck in traffic, from a courthouse, from the couch in front of the TV, from any place, a coffee at Starbucks, waiting in line, you've got, you know, 6 minutes before your coffee's done, you're answering an email. What about those? That's why I say it's important to look at this from the sent items perspective, okay? If I always journal every email that I send, and obviously I haven't done it yet because I was on the road, I was in Chicago, and I was in South Bend, and so not every email that I sent has been journaled yet because I sent these from my iPad or my iPhone. As long as you've got your phone or your iPad or whatever other device set up to properly integrate with your Exchange, every email that you send will end up in your sent items. So when I get back to the office, I can journal these emails appropriately. All I have to do is go through my sent items and move them to World Docs. So here's David Moon asking about a client. Since David Moon is not usually asking about clients, I need to send it over to the client files and tell it that it is specific to Troff Petsky. That's the matter. It's an email. I'm Paul. These are all the things I need to do to journal. And bam, I have journaled those. Now the other side of the coin is I can also bill for them from here. So here's an email to Jim, or actually from me to remind me to do something. Here's an email from Michael Miller about a CD, and I can automatically create the fee entry from here, and I'm going to bill Stout again because I have a note to clean out the Stout fee entries that shouldn't have been created. And I can either expand upon this, I can totally replace it, or I can leave it the way it is, and I've just billed another 0.25 hours to Stout for an email, and I can see that I did that. I'm going to let Patty interrupt me again. What do we have, Patty?
Gina has a question, Paul, and she wants to know, how do I add Practice Master to my toolbar?
I'll show you that in just a second. Do me a favor, Patty, make a note so I don't forget. There's part of my infrastructure right there. Everything gets written down. I'll show you in just a second, and it's relatively simple. So here's the concept. I always, when I send an email, immediately bill for it and journal it when I'm sitting at my desk. When I'm out on the road, as I was for the last 3 days, I go ahead and send those emails from my iPad, from my iPhone, And when I get back to the office, which as you can see I haven't done yet because it's just Friday at 11:21, and so I haven't quite gotten caught up from being out on the road, I go through my sent items, I bill for everything that's appropriate, and then I journal. By doing those things, we can get a handle on two very important things. One is important from a how your practice runs sort of standpoint. Do all the people that need access to correspondence and to see what's gone back and forth correspondence-wise in your office, do all those people have that access? They do if you're journaling your emails into WorldDocs or PracticeMaster, and they are able to pull up the matter and see everything that's happened. I think that's huge. I think that's what we call matter-centric emailing. In other words, we are taking the emails that we've sent or received, and we are making them matter-centric. We are putting them with the matter so that later on we can pull up a matter, go to the email tab, go to WorldDocs, and see exactly what's transpired. The other part that I think is equally important, and most attorneys will think is more important, is we're capturing time that we might not. With this paradigm shift where my dad or any other attorney is no longer writing letters that somebody else is helping him to remember to bill for, we're not billing for them. When we're standing in line at Starbucks, we're answering an email, we get our double latte, skim, fat-free, whatever, yada, yada, yada. I'm just a coffee guy, so I can make fun of the latte guys. We continue to write that email. They call your name. You take the coffee. You finish the email. You throw the cup away. You're late to court. You're meeting a client. Your client comes in. Whatever it is, you get distracted, and you make no note of the fact that you've done that email. You do nothing to help you remember to bill it. If we can capture that time, I can guarantee that every lawyer that is sending emails outside the office, if you can put something into place using what I'm showing you right here, you're going to get at least another 0.3 hours a week. Now, I say 0.3 hours a week because I'm sure that most of you that are lawyers that are doing this are thinking, hell, it's probably 0.3 or 4.4 hours a day, and it probably is. But if you take 0.3 hours, and let's say you're an insurance defense lawyer so you don't get quite as much money as the rest of them, $150, 0.3 hours, what is that, roughly $50? Roughly, let's say it's 30, just to be really, really low, to lowball this. 30 times per week times 52 weeks, you're talking significant money in a firm of 5, 10 lawyers. Now expand it. Say it's really, more like 0.4 hours, and it's really more like every day. Most of the firms that we work with that start doing this sort of thing to really systematically store and bill for their emails that they're answering outside the office find a 0.2 to 0.4 hour increase in billable time per lawyer per day. Start doing the numbers with those sorts of figures, and some of you know that you're even worse. My poster children for capturing time are a firm of 10 medical malpractice lawyers in Detroit who, between the 4 partners, each capture at least an extra hour a day. They're really bad. They were really bad. So getting them on this was a huge improvement to them. As you can do the math, that was a very big, significant jump in revenue for them. So I'm going to answer the one question, and while I'm doing that, if any more come to mind, ask them. Patty's not waving frantically, so I don't think anybody has. It's right here. In PracticeMaster, if you go to Maintenance, Integration, Toolbar Plugins, one of the ones that comes up first is Outlook, and you just click on this button here and install the Outlook plugin. If you have the rights to do that, which most of our clients are set up where their users have the right to simply install a plugin, then it will simply install that button bar into Outlook. Okay. If you don't, you might have to ask your nerd, your systems administrator, your IT guy, to either, if he's not on site, if he doesn't work for the firm, he might have to connect and do that for you. If he works at the firm, he might have to come up to your desk and do that for you. You should be able to simply click on this, and I'll go over that again. Maintenance, integration, toolbar plugins, install Outlook plugin. That's all there is to it. Patty, you have another question?
Gina says thank you, and it's done.
Yeah. So Gina must have had the rights to do that. All of you other people, go ahead and try this, and we'll let you ask me later if you do still have questions. Yeah, hold on. In a minute, I'll give you an email you can address me at if you have questions after the fact. Go ahead, Patty.
Don has a question. Once again, you have made me ask the question, what did we do before Practice Master and WorldDocs?
Well, you know, it's all about how you use them. I have some firms that have gotten Practice Master or have gotten WorldDocs maybe from somebody else, and they're not doing these things. So really, it's not just having WorldDocs and Practice Master, it's how you use them. And with really just a few small changes, you can really significantly enhance the income and the organization of your matters. Go ahead. Another question from Patty.
Stephanie asks, can you journal bill a chain of emails, or do you have to journal bill each email individually?
You can mark and then hit the button, but it will still pop up an individual screen for each one, okay? That's a Practice Master thing. In WorldDocs, you can create these folders over here so that if all of these applied to Purdue Law offices, I could just grab them and drag them over to Purdue Law and drop them, and they would be instantly profiled specifically to Purdue Law. Now, I'm glad that, who asked that question?
Stephanie.
Stephanie. Well, thank you, because you reminded me that I forgot one thing. With the latest version of Practice Master, version 17, which is not officially out yet, some of our clients are on a beta copy of it. Some are not. So when it comes out, this is something that was added. If you have WorldDocs and you upgrade to version 17, you can add the Practice Master button bar into WorldDocs. Now, you wouldn't really create a journal record in Practice Master of an email that you've already profiled and journaled to WorldDocs, but you can create the fee record. So if I go to my favorites, just to get something up on my screen, and you can, of course, those of you who use WorldDocs know you can come up with all sorts of different ways to hit a button and show all the emails that you sent in the last 2 days, just like you can look at your sent items in Outlook. So you can create the fee entries also from WorldDocs by simply highlighting an email, clicking on Practice Master, Create Fee Record, and don't let me down here. There we go. It automatically creates a fee entry for that specific client because it knows who it is. Because in WorldDocs, if you hooked it into Practice Master, when you journal the emails, it already knows who they are. Just like when I did that, created the fee entry in Practice Master from Outlook after I journaled the email to Outlook, it knew who it was for. So same sort of thing going on here. You can create a fee entry in Practice Master from WorldDocs. Now, the one thing I don't like about this, and I don't have any control over it, it's just the way it is, unlike my Outlook mailbox, where I have this little F to indicate that this has been billed, a fee has been created for it, I don't have any little flag like that that's going to show up in my WorldDocs document list. So my recommendation is consider using a combination of the two, where it's automatically billed when you send it or from your sent items, and then you journal it into WorldDocs, because then you can look and say, yes, I billed for that. Yes, I now want to move that into WorldDocs. So there we have it. Any more questions, Patty? Okay. You can nod, Patty. You don't have to frantically grab for your phone. And let's all give Patty a round of applause. She was a little nervous. Leanne's on vacation. If you got here before I opened up the meeting and you saw the screen that comes up just from GoToWebinar, it had Leanne's picture there. That's not who's here. It's Patty, and I think she did a great job being our Well, not our humble moderator, but our Ready for Christmas to Begin moderator for today. So if you have questions after the fact, you can always get a hold of me. I have 2 email addresses. One is hard, paul.perdue@attorneycomputersystems.com. We do have people working day and night trying to make that email address longer, but for now that's it. My easy email address is paul@paulperdue.com, and it's Purdue like the school, not the chicken, P-U-R-D-U-E, paul@paulperdue.com. So if you're watching this later, or you have a question that you think of later and you happen to have attended live, be sure to simply email it to me. I'll be happy to answer them. Everybody have a good rest of the afternoon, rest of the day. We will see you next month when we are talking about something exciting, I'm sure. I'm just realizing I forgot to check what it was. Now, I will tell you, that reminds me, that if you go to attorneycomputersystems.com, that is my tie and my shirt, in case you're wondering what I look like. This is it. You can always get to the recorded versions of our Coffee Pot webinars, which is what you're attending right now. Our eBytes video series featuring Mary Jo giving quick tips on very specific things. Our Paul and Mary Jo show, my son Spencer says, do you really call it the Paul and Mary Jo show? Yes, we do, which is a more elongated, expanded version of the eBytes, where we go into great detail about a specific topic, and our 3 virtual user group meetings. You can see all that recorded content, and you can also find out what the next Coffee Pot webinar is going to be simply by coming here. As soon as we post today's, we will then put up the December registration link, and so that content is always available to you. You can always come back and review anything that you've seen live or heard live, or if you don't get a chance to attend. So everybody have a good day. We'll see you next month. Thanks much. Bye-bye.